Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Nima podcast, where I interview creatives, artists, and innovators about their worldviews and stories. So today I'm joined by my guest, Aleksandra Art. And Aleksandra is the co-founder of Electric Artefacts, which is an exhibition and consultancy firm for contemporary art and NFT-focused art projects, and an ambassador for Dot Art, which is a digital domain service for the arts community. She's also one of the co-founders of the Relief Project, which was a humanitarian aid initiative that launched in February 2022 and has raised over $1.5 million for Ukrainian charities. So, Aleksandra, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Nima. Great to start my day with you today.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to this conversation. What time is it, by the way, where you are?
It's 8:30 a.m.
Okay, early start. Thanks for joining so early. So, as I was doing research for this podcast, I heard you in another podcast mention that you sold your first book at the age of 6 and you organized an auction at age 11. So, I was wondering, what do you think led to you being so entrepreneurial from a young age? And, have you always seen the world in an entrepreneurial way?
Wow, Nima, thank you so much. Very, very well researched question, actually. Yes, it is true. So, like a little backstory about me. So, I was born in Ukraine, and until like the age of 4, I lived there, and then I sort of lived between Prague and Ukraine. But maybe not many people know that during the 90s, it was Ukraine was going through a tectonic shift, if it isn't almost every decade. And at the time, it was the fall of the Soviet Union. And so my grandparents were all mostly academicians or working in the government. And so they had like very steady professions. And my dad, at the time, he was also studying, and he saw that all knowledge that you were accumulating all of a sudden became not irrelevant, but some was failing its sort of people. And in this entrepreneurial spirit, essentially, he was the person who, among sort of like his family and among her family, had to find new ways of growing, of moving forwards in this unsettling economy. And for them, like the ethos was mostly about making your own way and building your own career and finding opportunities for yourself. And I think a lot of that has passed on to me. And art was always a very big aspect of our lives. So my dad would like help emerging artists, and we had some people in the family who were artists, and so just I guess the combination of two inspired me to pursue creative endeavors ever since a young age.
That's really great to hear. So yeah, I guess that's sort of finding your own way spirit, which I guess came out of a force of necessity from your family, but that was transferred to you, and along with your mixture with interest in art and all of that, sort of led to you doing what you do now. Cool to hear. So can you tell so from there, what drove you towards consulting and like leadership consulting and in general getting into the art market?
Of course, I'll try to go relatively brief. So I was growing up in Prague. I went to an American school there, among many other English schools. And at one point, I moved to London. And after living in a city like Prague, London feels like a different planet. There's so many opportunities. It's overwhelming. It's exciting. It's starting life from a new sort of blank page. And I loved it there. But unfortunately, sort of being Ukrainian at the time, not having my passport, everything, I had to go back and sort of like find a way to return, get documents, find opportunities. So when I left London after university and went back to Prague, I had this incredible motivation that I need to like my life is more than this. And I was going through everyone I met in London at the time, and there was the one person I met who I found very interesting and aspiring, and I saw him as a leader, as a mentor, and I asked if I can work for that person, which led me to work for a boutique leadership consultancy at the time. I was a trainee, and it gave me opportunities to travel to the US. We worked with leaders of different organizations. So the founder of the company was working directly for example, the president of the North Carolina University, or for the Nielsen senior team, Starbucks, Pfizer, all across the world. And it was extremely interesting learning experience. not many people, not enough people appreciated the more of leadership and soft skills in a work environment. So I would say for those 2 years, I had an opportunity to really learn about how the system works and potentially fails employees, and how to best build a career growth path for everyone in the team. And this led me to many opportunities of growth. And eventually, I was able to also financially support myself to move back to London when I had the chance to.
Great. So during those 2 years that you mentioned, what sort of things did you learn about leadership that maybe you had no idea about, or that you think many people don't know about, or that surprised you in some way?
I think we underestimate the power of conversations and relationships. Like we always say that they matter the most and the community matters. It's something recent, right? Like we all, when we entered the NFT space, we discovered that how much community matters. But I think it's also like one of the, for example, learnings I had is there are many leaders that to get to a certain point in your career, you develop a certain set of skills, or you use the inherent skills you have, maybe talent or intuition. But then when you get to certain points, you reach your limit. And that, at sort of like that peak of your career, this is where it is very challenging for leaders, especially of like big organizations, or I'm sure maybe even here, like the influencers or the builders are influencing. How do you get further? And this is where the difficult part can begin, because you have to stop thinking about sort of outside, you have to start thinking about the inside, and you have to start acquiring new skills and redefining who you are. It's like in university, they tell you forget everything you learned. And I think in many cases of personal growth, people also reach a point of time where what got you here won't get you there. And this is actually a title of Marshall Goldman's book, which I think really inspired me to always see other people not by the skills sort of like that they have, which are similar to mine, so we can work great together, but by skills that I don't have and I can learn from.
Yeah, this is really interesting because leadership is something I've been thinking about more recently as well. It was something that I didn't think about at all in the early stages of my life. But as I'm getting older and more mature and into the world, I'm seeing that how important it is. So shifting to Web3 for a bit, I've seen a few organizations try to shift into the Web3 world, but sometimes you can tell they're being a bit ingenuine, or maybe they're just in it for the money. And I think we're going to see that more and more. When offering your consulting services, let's say to companies trying to get into Web3, what are some potential green flags and red flags that you might see regarding their leadership or organization?
About understanding, I hate these words, but understanding your target audience, because the shift happens not only technologically, but also in the mindset. And when we worked with different artists approaching us last year, or different companies, the relationship that happened before, it was more about one-way relationship. So the company and the brand imposes something on the buyer until they finally really want it. Whereas here, it's a lot about connection. And I think the struggle I'm seeing with many different brands that were successful in sort of like their social campaigns in Web2 are finding it hard to do this shift, because they are not necessarily willing to accept the fact of how much influence the community can have in the development of the project. And I think that it's a matter of employing this mindset internally before you're going to be able to fully connect with the space. Some people are overcoming it, others not so much. I think it would require new teams, people who are native to the space, to truly drive that change.
Yes, I guess one thing that has kept coming up already in the conversation is just the importance of relationships. It seems like for you, and well, it seems like it's something that you've developed quite well, making relationships, whether it's professional or anything else. So yeah, I feel like that's quite an important thing that needs focus, I guess, maybe in a lot of different areas for a lot of different people, and it's something that you have managed to develop, which is a good thing. What would you say are sort of important characteristics for leaders? within Web3 or art, like just art forms?
This is a tough question because I would love to say it just comes internally, but I think maybe if I could like pinpoint a couple of them, like for example, the first would be you have to really see the opportunity that you can learn from any single person. Anyone has a different experience than you, so you could simplify this to being open, open to learning. I think also the second one, which almost clashes with the first one, is the fact that you know more than you think you do. I think many people don't trust themselves enough because they are outshouted by louder voices. But if someone is loud, it doesn't mean they're right. Um, you have to really have believe in your intuition and your experience because at the end of the day, your mind has a beautiful way of calculating what's the best for you. I think it was well described in Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink. And I had this trouble sometimes as well. I couldn't explain why I'm making certain decisions, but I just think in my heart that like this is the right thing to do. So trust yourself, but also be open to learning, I would say, are some of my favorites.
Oh, that's great advice. So, could we talk a bit about the Relief project that you were part of? And if you could just talk a bit about how it came together and then how it was executed and everything else regarding it.
Yes, of course. So I was actually in Dubai for the Expo Dubai. We were hosting a press conference at the US Pavilion the night before, which we were preparing for a long time. It was a team of me and four more people actually that flew in from Ukraine. It was for a project of actually a space mission sending an artwork to the moon. So it was all very like exciting and overwhelming. And the next morning we wake up and all of a sudden we find out that the war started, and obviously like no one slept for 3 days following that, and we were all really stressed for our families. People were trying to understand what to do, mostly just being in shock. But that first night, I do what you know I love doing, and I hit Twitter looking for answers or a sense of direction or clarity and seeing how I can help. And I saw several people who have quite a big following and influence in the space who were saying like, how can we help? What can we do? And I started reaching out to the people. And one of them was Andrew Wing. And Andrew was the first one to respond, say that they're building a team, they're pulling a team together, and they actually already kicked off to start a collection and to basically do like a blind man's drop to raise some funds. And I was, I had my network of artists in Ukraine, and I asked right away, do you have any artists from Ukraine? Because those ones will definitely be in need at the time. And there weren't many. I think there was one. So they quickly took me on the team, and I started curating works and speaking to artists. And it was incredible because some of the artists were like literally on the road to the shelter, and they were sending me like Dropbox links. Others were like helping their families. Like it was all very surreal. I'm not sure a curator that for this experience, but it was definitely like the most incredible experience and unfortunate of my life, where you curate works with artists that are literally fleeing to bomb shelters. And I was also fortunate that the lady who was with me in Dubai used to work in the foreign press office for the sort of the government in Ukraine, and she had connections with the local charities and authorities. So we were able to quickly source a network of potential donors or like people we can donate to and help set up crypto wallets like for once we raise the funds. So it was an incredible, I think, to like what was it, even like one day of coordinating everything. And then we stayed up. We were supposed to do a drop at 10 p.m. my time, but as any drop, like you need some time and certain things weren't going through. So I remember staying up until like 8 a.m. that night, just being on the line with everyone across the world. It was five of us, um, and coordinating everything to make sure it works. And then finally we did the drop, and we wanted to buy some cells as well, but we just didn't have we didn't have an opportunity because it was sold out within 30 seconds. And I remember like we all like fell back and just couldn't believe what just happened. It was so incredible. Like we had Satvik, Giovanni, Raskalov, Senior Crypto. Everyone brought a different element of what they knew best, and together made all this whole thing possible. And then we launched a second edition a month later because funds were still needed. And I just appreciate so much everyone in the team because it was only me and Raskolov who are actually from Ukraine. And I understand like all of us have other work to do and support ourselves and our families. So the fact that we got together and did this, it just shows how incredible this space is and how quickly people can get together to make a real impact.
Yeah, I think it's a really incredible accomplishment that you guys achieved, and also it's impressive how quickly you managed to get it all together. And of course, that shows the power of the great team that you had, and well, obviously not sleeping as well. But I think the whole project is a is a great case study for showing the role of Web3 and the role that Web3 can play in fundraising for social impact. And I mean, in this case, it was almost like an emergency and like a very reactive project because it happened so quickly. But in general, fundraising for social impact, I think this project showed that very well. Um, how did you go about picking the artists whose works were to be included in the project?
There was it's a good question. So I'm a part of the crypto artist community and then of Ukraine, and then I knew quite a lot of artists directly because we worked with them throughout the years. I think because we had such a short time period, like there was no time for an open call or anything. So I had to reach out to the artists I knew. And the first three that came to my mind were people who were actually exploring this idea of conflicts and tensions for a while. So the first one, Stepan Ryabchenko, who also appeared then in the Time magazine article, it was incredible that he actually created a 3D render model of a memorial on Snake Island years back before the incidents where like the soldiers were defending that area and told the Russian ship to go fuck herself. So like there was already some like history of art around this. So like he almost like foresaw the need for that sculpture, but also his work is just filled with love, and I felt like this is exactly what like people might need. Like a second one was Alexander Sasha Maslov, and he was working on a project called the Railroad Ladies, also a couple years back, documenting the basically the female workers on railway stations. And maybe some of you know that during the war, these were instrumental helping people escape. So it was almost like a celebration for the workers. So he minted one of those portraits, and then finally it was Julia Bedaeva, who also in her work for a very long time has been exploring the tension of basically the oppressor and the oppressed, making a direct reference to sort of like Ukraine and its imperial neighbor.
And that's great. And the project, I mean, from what I saw, it received quite a lot of exposure after it was executed. How did you, uh, what did you think of the reception of the project worldwide, and how was it for you going through the experience and getting the reception that it received?
I have to be honest with you, like after working in, I don't know, digital art, arts and technology for the last 6 years, I really hoped this wouldn't like my sort of like the biggest exposure wouldn't come from something so tragic. So it was it was hard. Like normally you're excited about these things, but I was just so busy checking up on family and everything, and that when people were calling about like reporter calls and interviews, it was just something in the background. It was just like it was impossible to focus, and then just later on realizing that like oh my god, like this went into Time magazine, this went into here, there, like so many articles. There was a moment of time where like the Evening Standards also reached out and they wanted our portraits, the edition that was printed across London. And actually felt even a bit scared to show my face because like no one knew what to expect. Like I remember sending them the work of my portrait where it's an overlay by an artist as a projection, so you couldn't even see my face clearly. And I was just like, I was trying to like be very, very careful about sort of like what I put out there. Um, but eventually we realized that like these stories need to be heard. There needs to be inspiration. And so I'm happy to see that it's inspired many other charity projects to follow.
Yeah, I can imagine just how surreal the whole time was. I mean, I can only imagine. Um, but no, thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, I think it is an incredible story, and I'm sure it will inspire many people. So yeah, no, thank you for being a part of it and sharing about it. So I want to shift a bit to your Electric Artefacts platform. Could you talk just briefly about what it is and what you aim to do with the platform?
Yeah, of course. So while I was working at Dot Art, I basically had a chance to participate and help organize many different events that were doing online exhibitions for artists or digital collaborations or fairs. So for those of you that don't know, like Dot Art was quite early in the space to facilitate some of the key initiatives that were taking place pre sort of like the NFT boom. But obviously, like it was difficult for me to execute on my own vision because it was always supporting one of the visions that we were supporting. So I realized that it was before COVID that there's no space online to showcase digital art in the formats that it deserves. So this was before you had like virtual gallery spaces on every corner. I felt like digital art is just not being respected the way it should be. So the idea was we would build a platform, which we did, where you would have audio recordings about artists talking about their work. You could have AR experience of the artwork to see how a print would look like on your wall. You could hang it in your room. We would write very detailed essays and have many talk exhibiting artists. So we launched three exhibitions through a period between 2020 and 2022. And we were supported last year by the British Council and the Ukrainian Cultural Fund to do an online residency for British and Ukrainian artists to explore cultural collaborations. And then also I helped co-author a paper on digital collaborations, which actually led me to be very interested in this direction of sort of like how can artists co-create together and collaborate. And this actually led me to also a series of conversations with Michael, who founded Join, where I'm working now, because I believe that sort of like our visions aligns, and this is the direction this space is taking. Sort of like how can artists work together towards something bigger? Because if we just look at like the progression of everything in our city, it comes down to how can we become closer? How can we network closer? And I was just listening to different projects by artists in the UK presenting into these, and there was almost this idea that the future is for us to keep evolving as human beings. It's not about having more sophistication in our bodies. It's actually going back and becoming this like almost interconnected beehive with like a shared consciousness. I know maybe I'm going too deep, but these are just like some of the themes that inspired me about like what I've been doing and what I do today. So now, like most of my attention is on Join, while Electric Artifact, the team I have there, we continue thinking about sort of like all these things and action it's taking, and helping co-author papers and participate in like some think tanks in this direction.
Well, that's great to hear about your collaboration with Join as well and how the visions are aligning. Because, as you know, I'm also a big fan of the Join and had Michael on the podcast and Andrea who works with them. So that's good to hear. So related to, I guess, uh, both, let's say, Join and Electric Artifacts, I want to talk a bit about just the idea of NFT galleries, just the concept of them. So, and this is just a thought that I've had, but feel free to, feel free to argue against me. But I think NFTs are supposed to sort of challenge the idea of sort of the intermediary, as in general, just someone being the intermediary. And it's allowed a lot of people to finally sell works by themselves and get all the money for themselves. And galleries have traditionally served this role where they've come in and they fund artists, but then they also end up taking a fair bit of the money. So we're also seeing the rise of many NFT galleries and curation platforms, which I feel like yet again have become a sort of intermediary. So how do you see the role of NFT galleries in the space? And yeah, do you think they almost defeat the purpose, or is there more to it than that?
I think you're touching upon a very good topic that is being explored and needs to be explored further. So my background, like a little bit before I went to work for that art, I studied art business at Sotheby's. So it's a master's program that teaches you how the business of art, how galleries, auction houses, and the whole ecosystem should run. And I must say that we're seeing now, and especially how some of the auction houses operate. For example, you don't sell from the primary market because you're going to crash the artist's market or some other things. They're breaking their own rules. So I think in simple terms, it's still a new model that is being explored, and people are being very opportunistic in this direction. But what I'm seeing, which is sort of like fascinating and at the same time really straightforward, is that last year when we worked almost as a gallery, we would take, I don't know, 20% or 10% commission from the artists for helping promote their collections. We realized that this model doesn't work for us. Like you don't even break even. It's unless this is all you do, because we all had full-time jobs, so this was a side thing just to like help artists navigate the space. And we realized like this is unsustainable for us because we don't have the volume to really help grow the artists. And what I'm now is, if it does make sense, it makes sense as an agent. And now we see artists who are, especially like in the NFT space and semi-influencers, instead of having a gallerist, they have an agent that comes from more the world of music or celebrity culture. And the percentages are also low, but because they have the volume, they have the connections, it's easier for them already to add new artists to what they're doing. It works for everyone. And I also thought the idea of an artist having a gallerist, it sort of like, or an agent, doesn't make sense, because why would they share money with someone else? But let's be honest. I think I mentioned this at the beginning of my talk. What got you here won't get you there. So as an artist, there's a certain threshold of just like your physical time that you can achieve certain things. But if you want to continue growing, like, it helps our agent. It helps having someone, negotiating for you any potential contracts with brands, or any potential like exhibition opportunities, or just thinking about your pricing, or just like having someone to bounce ideas off. And there are many different ways that artists can go about it. So you can have your day-to-day manager. It's like almost like artists in the traditional world have a studio manager who helps run the day-to-day operations of your artistic production. Some artists they used to have social media managers, but I think that is a bit irrelevant, because technically you definitely, if you're in the space, you should be the voice behind your avatar. But then also, in addition to having a manager, you would have an agent. So the manager and the agent would work together to find your opportunities. In a sense that there's some NFT galleries that are popping up. I think what's attractive is that they have a physical space, because at the end of the day, we're seeing that it's still this like validation of in real life appearance matters. Like, to many artists I speak, and I think generally, even for myself, I like to meet people in real life, so I think it will continue being important. But apart from that, it would be hard for galleries with a physical space to continue running on these margins unless they either scale up quite a bit or sign up some of like the top-notch artists. And also there's the trouble between, are you going to consign as a gallery? Are you going to sort of like represent and get commission only from a certain collection that's being exhibited, or from the whole body of work that the artist produces. Because I've been on both sides. Like if you're a gallery and you are given like a selection of works, you spend a lot of time promoting them, especially if the artist is not so well known. You get your commission, but that's the end of your relationship. So all the work you put in to promote the artist continues to having opportunities and earning money, but you as a gallery, you have to start from scratch with the next artist. But if you represent the art in all their body of work, then it's an ongoing, continually equal relationship because you both put in a lot of effort to make it a success. So I think it's a challenge, and I think in the traditional world it is true that a lot of galleries would take 50%, and it's savage, it's unreasonable, but I think for a lot of artists there was just no other way, and that's why they had to, because there was just no other way to really push through this very gated, like exclusive community, like Art Basel and Frieze and all the major galleries. They didn't take digital art so serious. The journalists, I remember going to panel talks 3 years ago, and like some of the major journalists were bashing digital art, saying that AI art is stupid and will never succeed. And obviously now this has changed, and I think everyone is still trying to adjust to how they continue what they're doing, whether completely ignoring it or trying to integrate it as part of their work.
Yes, thank you for sharing your perspectives on that. There's obviously many factors in in the conversation around NFT galleries and curation platforms and the role of artists in that. Yeah, I think just from the artist's point of view as well, that everyone I guess has to make their own decision and figure out whether they want to be signed by galleries or as an agent, as you said, because of course they do help with a lot of things, as you've mentioned, such as just handling contracts for you and just a lot of the official admin stuff that an artist might not want to do. So that is definitely the positive that I will see. But like for someone like me, for example, I just have this like need to do so many things by myself, and I don't know if it's just like a sense of control. They're wanting to have a sense of control over how I'm represented, or something like that, something to that effect. That like I only trust myself with how I want to play play like this game here. But again, that has disadvantages because what got you here, one can't take you there, as you said. So yeah, it is a big topic. I think like whether choosing to work with a gallery or not, and ultimately is something that everyone has to decide for themselves. I just hope everyone has awareness around it and thinks about it and doesn't just fall into, let's say, galleries trying to take advantage just in the same way as it was done in the traditional art space, because there are many more options here now.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I just can I just
mhm.
quickly add to that point? It's really important, true, because you need to find someone like to see their intention. Like what we're seeing, what we saw last year is a lot of successful institutions brought on artists who are doing really well in this space, and the sales were coming from the artists' collectors. So it's almost like they took them in to say, okay, now you're like culturally respect and valued because you're going to be in our space. But at the end of the day, they were still taking in the collectors of those artists without being able to drive purchases from their own network. And I think it's really important as an artist, if you do want to sign a gallery or agent, is to look at this. Why are they doing it? Are they doing it just to sort of like tap into your existing collector base? Or are they doing it because they believe in you and journey and they want to see you thrive?
Exactly, very good point. So it's about sort of reading the room and seeing the intention and deciding consciously and not just like unconsciously choosing something because it's easy. I think it's important to read the intentions. So for the Electric Artefacts platform, and I'm not sure what your role exactly is within Join, but maybe within as well. What do you look for when curating artworks for the platform?
So at Join, my role right now is actually we are going to be releasing a whole lot of tools, especially for artistic, like to drive artistic creation, but also to provide opportunities for artists. So my role is to educate people about the platform and find those that are interested in bringing artists together to create something new. For example, you're launching a project, you want more artists involved, so you can make an open call for submissions. And we have a big network of artists and creators. Also, if you're launching something and you need a specific set of tools by artists, for example, 3D modelers or AI artists, you can also create like target specific types of areas. Or even if you just want someone to vote on your next project, like the idea is to just set up a space where you list all the information about what you're doing, and then you can release different campaigns where people can interact. And this is important because my most recent curation was exactly connected to one of those events. We are exhibiting, and Andrea is also coming to New York, and one of her works is going to be there. We're exhibiting on Monday at Super Chief in collaboration with Nympha and Super Chief Gallery, and we're doing a pop-up where we were offered 5 spots to exhibit someone. So essentially, I was first approached as a curator independently to curate a section of that exhibition, but then I thought, oh my God, like we can bring this to so many more people who maybe like really want to be there. And so I decided like this should be a bigger partnership, and we did it together using Join's platform and tapping into a wider network of artists. We decided to basically increase the amount of spots to 10. We got like 160 or more applicants. And the idea behind the curation essentially was about showing what the artist, like, does the art move you? Because like right now, I'm also helping shortlist some of the, or long list, I think at this point of iteration, for the Lumen Prize, which is another massive big arts award running for about 10 years now across different areas. And like something that I see that we've been talking among the jury, this recurring pattern of how does the art move you? Because this goes back again to the book I referenced, Blink, where sort of like subconsciously you've seen a big amount of work, you've seen sort of like what's trending, what's not, what's innovative, what's pushing the limits of technology, where does the work speak to your soul directly, and sort of like based on that, you just want to show the next step, sort of like almost like artists that are pushing forwards the experience. And also we have to understand that a lot of people that are coming to New York right now, I think you saw these threads. Imagine 90% of your net worth down and you hear me saying GM. Like these kind of things are being thrown around the internet. And we just want like people to come to the gallery and feel like it's almost not an escape, but it's a meditative, immersive experience where you're able to disconnect. And I think that all the works that we have are following this theme. So we're trying to make like a sense of depth, a sense of movement, a sense of transcending the boundaries of our planet, and just it takes you on a journey, and you sort of like through this journey you're able to sort of like revisit what you've got, like what we all together as a massive NFT community went through, and just like take a step back and let that sink in and understand why are we here in the first, because everything was so rushed, everything was so graphic and poppy, and I think that many people just flew by. And I think it was one of my recent posts, it was like life is what happens in between. And I think like the idea behind like ethics we selected as well is about like taking like a break and breathing in and just like enjoying the in-betweens. I hope I'm not like overwhelming. My morning coffee just kicked in.
No. It's great to hear. Yeah, I really like what you said about the sense of transcendence and sense of losing space and losing boundaries that you get, and so you're sort of trying to curate for that, which I think is a very very beautiful thing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the gallery space and yeah, seeing what I experience in there. Okay, so we have just around 15 minutes left. What are you most excited about in the Web3 space coming up, let's say in the next few years? Or like what aspect of the decentralized world do you think will be the most culturally relevant and significant in the coming years? Like, will it be the charity projects such as the ones you worked on? Will it be the metaverse, the art? the profile pictures, which I doubt will be that. But yeah, what do you think?
This is a tough one. I always also ask people. I think if we look back on the previous, if you can call it bear market, people like the team at OpenSea, the team at Known Origin, essentially teams at the biggest platforms we know today, they were building in silence. Like there were collectors, don't get me wrong. Art Gnome was buying X copy for $5, but like it wasn't like on this massive scale. And I think what happened this year is we had a lot of actors that came into the space to raise funds and pursue ideas that maybe they're not 100% sure about. And what I think I'm like the most excited is, even though just like many other people, I am feeling the pain of what's happening right now in the market, but at the same time, I think so many beautiful things came out of the previous bear cycle that right now the people who are going to stay and build are people who actually have strong belief in this space moving forward, and the values that they adhere to are pure. Because I mean, if you're almost out of funding and you're extremely bootstrapped, you're probably going to fall off if you don't 100% believe in your idea. And so I think that while we had like we're building an ecosystem here, so the first step provides the marketplaces for people to buy and sell. The next phase was a lot of exhibition spaces coming out. Like once you were able to collect your work, how do you exhibit it? So you have Deca.art, or you have OnCyber, or you have other virtual environments where people were able to showcase their work. Then we had new tools for artists. And I think the most successful execution of that was the long generative art that we saw on art blocks and FX Hash on Tezos, where artists were able to provide a certain level of experience and collection building, which connected a lot of collectors. What I'm seeing next, and I think we also had the conversation yesterday with the Alöchin from Snark.art, they're building OG.art, which is an interesting platform that will allow for another level of creation. So it would be dynamic NFTs that continue evolving over time. So I'm excited for projects that are going to provide new tools for creation. And then naturally, I'm excited for what we are doing. Otherwise, why would I be there in the first place? Because I think it's also like adding that next level of infrastructure for the space to thrive long term. And I think that now that we're entering this space where there's a lot of uncertainty, for us to stick together. And if someone is creating something or giving opportunities to people, I think it's good that we can bring it all together and almost have like a hub for opportunities for artists and creators to come together and exchange value. So I think building on top of that infrastructure that was laid out in the first bear cycle, and seeing all the creative projects that people that are true believers building in a couple of years will be something exciting to look back on. Because I could talk about fashion, brands, I could talk about like how the industry is onboarding blockchain. There are many exciting things going on, but my focus has and will always be on art. So that's why I think especially I wanted to highlight this area.
No, that's great. I think, yeah, infrastructure is a cool word there. And yeah, if you can build the infrastructure itself, that's obviously a very impactful thing. And if you can just build a sort of ecosystem of your own, or any sort of well, yeah, infrastructure is the best word for it. But because it's such an open playground still, and everything's still so early, many things that haven't been built yet. So yeah, if you're just finding the opportunities of what can be built, seeing what you want built, and then making that happen, obviously that's I think, yeah, we're gonna see a lot more of that, and people can take advantage of that if they want to. Okay, so just going back to almost to the start of the conversation, we're talking about relationships and sort of how I sort of gather that they've been quite important in your journey. Do you have any tips for people wanting to make quality relationships in the Web3 NFT space? What is the best way to go about making quality relationships here?
Oh, that's a good question. It makes me, sometimes it just happens naturally. Like some of the best times, like I just recently met some really awesome people. One of them is listening today, actually. Hi, Max. um, I brought him a pineapple last night for like a welcoming party. We had the best time. So basically, like, what I'm trying to say is that it happens unexpectedly, but what helped me the most is I found people that inspired me. So I would go to talks and I would just listen and be fascinated with like what the people were saying. So I think what's great is just like finding people that you believe in and that move you and inspire you and you like what they do, because those people typically have around them a network of like-minded individuals with who you can connect. And I think I also made this Twitter post once. It's like, if you don't know where to start by helping others. Like if you just came into the space and you're like, oh, I want to drop my NFT collection, blah, blah, blah. Like, first of all, rethink, is this all I do here? Because there's so much more. And second of all, why don't you first start by helping on someone else's journey? Like people who already know where they're going, or essentially like know what they want to achieve, and you see yourself being valuable to them. Because I think that's how I started. So last year, I had my dollar job. I was exploring. I was asked to like. I think it was 2020 was the first time I was asked to speak about NFTs, and I had to spend like my nights researching it because I was so nervous. And then I was like, wow, I love this area. I want to learn more. And so I just started like similarly like you are right now. I would reach out to people to interview them. Like I wasn't getting paid. I was just writing for my blog. I was just interviewing them, listening to their stories, like being genuinely interested. And I think this like through learning and self-education, you also provide value to other people. Like you help shed light on their project. It doesn't have to be someone super famous. It can be just like an artist that inspires you, or a builder or a collector. I mean, most collectors are just like artists or like people like us. It's not like we're all, you know, super rich. Like we're some of us are spending like our pocket money on buying art instead of like having a night out. Like so I think everyone in this space deserves some like light, and through building these connections that are valuable, I think this is a really good way to learn more about what people do, to find points of intersection, and maybe down and work on the project together as well. Because like most of the relationships I have in this space, yes, we're friends, and we are also people who potentially at one point of time will end up working together. And I don't know how for most people, but for me, my work is I don't even call it work. It's just it's a hobby, it's a lifestyle. Like I think this is all one big lifestyle, and collaborating on things are just like some of the things that I love doing. So if that's something that excites you as well, you know, you can follow some of my suggestions. If not, then you know, just have fun, go party, go crazy, and that's also a good way to meet people.
Yeah, they both work ultimately, but yeah, I would give similar advice that you have given as well. Like providing value is a very key one. Like and providing unique value, that's even better. If you can provide something that no one else is to other people, help them along their journey, that is a great way to well gain someone's network and just build a relationship. And especially if it's a win-win scenario. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing your tips on that. So last question I have for you, and this is a question I've asked a few of my guests, but what is your definition of success? Like, at what point do you think you will say, you know what, I've done enough. This is amazing. I'm gonna, yeah, like this is success for me.
um, it's an interesting question. I think for me, success would be when I don't have the worry at the back of my head about what needs to be done tomorrow, in a week, in a month, in not in the sense of a creative pursuit, but in the sense of just general like stability. I think that like I've already been feeling happier than ever despite everything that's going on. I feel like the more pain you go through, the more you appreciate life. And I just felt so lucky and fortunate. I have my family with me, you know. With everything going on in Ukraine, it really changed my mindset of what happiness means in life. And I think we often forget the most simple and basic things that we should be happy about. um, I feel pretty successful where I am, but I think what would really make me feel successful is if I didn't have to worry, oh, I have my family now I have to take care of, oh, how am I going to do that? even though like the day to day, maybe the next year or so, I feel fine, but like in the long term, like, so I think like that sense of like when you have that sense of stability, it's good. But I also think that at the same time, my mindset is it will be good just because you have the confidence and the skills you have. So I don't think for me success is like one thing. I think it's a state of mind in which you feel comfortable and you know that everything will be okay. You will continue being happy, you will continue making people around you happy. And I think that's a win in life. Yeah, that's success for me.
That's a great answer and a great goal to point towards, for sure. I share some of that vision, especially the stability part. I 100% relate on that. Not having to worry. I think that would be a negative of success. So that's pretty much all the questions I had for you, Aleksandra. Thank you very much for sharing with me your stories and your time today. Do you have anything you want to say on conclusive remarks? Anything you have coming up? Anything you want to remind people about or anything like that?
Nima, thank you so much. This was well prepared and both challenging and exciting to talk about. I started my day rethinking of who I am, why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it's a perfect kickstart to my day. I love the fact that all of you guys joined. Thank you so much for being here today and listening to our talk. Um, I'm looking forward to this week in NFT NYC. If someone's around, hit me up. I look forward to making new connections. For me, coming up, it will mostly we'll be working on Join. So if anyone wants to learn, please get in touch. We're also next time speaking is in at the NFT NYC conference, but then also in London. We're working with Nicole from Vertical Crypto to provide a very exciting program. So 6 to 8 July, Proof of People at Fabric London, if anyone's around.
I might just see you in London because I think I'm going to come to the event. So yeah,
amazing.
that'll be cool. I need to buy tickets though. Hopefully there are still tickets left.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a great session. It's been great learning more about you, and I will put your social media links in the description for this podcast. So thank you everyone for joining, for listening, and thank you very much, Aleksandra, and I wish you the best for the future.
Thanks. Bye.